friends, and welcome to the School Librarian Learning Network podcast. I'm Steve Tatro, also known as Dr. T Loves Books, and I love talking about all things related to school libraries. I may be an old dog, but I'm always trying to learn new tricks. That's why in each episode of the SLLN podcast, I'll chat with a school librarian about a lesson, program, or activity they love. Hopefully, this can be a place for school librarians to get ideas and find new ways to engage with their students and staff. As a good friend likes to say, we're better together. So I hope this podcast will help school librarians connect with and learn from each other. The opinions and ideas shared in this podcast by myself and my guests are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. And because school librarians always strive to be good digital citizens, I cite sources when using material that is not my own. Without further ado, let's get to this week's episode. Hey everybody, we are back and I am here with a fellow Jersey person, which when we first met, I did not realize that we were practically next door neighbors. So this is kind of fun. So Meredith, welcome. We are so glad to have you. Why don't you take a second, tell folks who you are, where you're at, what you do.
Well, I guess because I'm on a librarian podcast, I must be a librarian. My name is Meredith. And I am a true Jersey girl. I grew up in North Jersey, in Bergen County, went to Rutgers, and go RU. And I got my master's at Rutgers. I did all my education there. I loved it. And then I met my husband there. We weren't dating at the time. It wasn't until later. But then he made me a South Jersey girl. I
traveled the whole width of the state.
The whole state. Yeah, so I've kind of been up and down and all over the state. And so I've been living in South Jersey, I guess the past 20 years. And I miss North Jersey bagels, but that's okay.
They do have really good bagels.
Yeah. So I've been a school librarian. I've done actually a lot of different things as a librarian, and I love it all. I think that's one thing that I found out doing my master's. As librarians, we all seem to have a lot of interests, a lot of very eclectic interests.
Yes.
That's cool.
Yes.
We do it all. We do budgets, we do analysis, and we do reading, and we do creative things. So I do love being a librarian. I really do.
How did you end up sort of in school librarianship? What was your path into the school library?
My father was a teacher. So, of course, I never wanted to be a teacher. I said, no, not doing it. And then I went to school and I graduated with a double major in German and economics and got to study abroad. It was awesome. And then I left college. I'm like, what am I doing? No clue. And the job I was in, I realized that I had really a lot of fun gathering information and writing reports. And okay, well, what can I do with this? And it turned out librarianship might be a good job for me. And then I decided, okay, let me see. Do I want to do a certain type of librarianship or do I want to do schools? And my father, who was still very close because he was a teacher locally, and he knew a lot of the teachers in our town. And he got me in touch with my old school librarian, my elementary school librarian, Mrs. Prendergast. And she was amazing. She really was phenomenal. And he got me in touch with her and she gave me Dr. Carol Kuthow's book, Seeking Meaning. And I read the book and the big takeaway was, as a school librarian, you are teaching people the skills to learn for themselves for the rest of their lives. And I put that in my application letter for the master's program and I got in and I got to have a class with Dr. Kuthow and I got to work with Ross Todd. I mean, it was incredible. And I never thought I would do school librarianship. I never thought in a million years. But listening to my dad, yes, Dad, you were right. Listening to my dad, it really led me to a wonderful place. And having the mentorship of my school librarian, and that kind of connection of what it really means to be a school librarian, to educate, so that was my path. That was my path.
Wow. Yeah. I have been in education a long time, but it wasn't until I really thought about school librarianship that I realized, like you said, it's a job that you are teaching people how to be lifelong learners. Because the classroom teacher, you teach specific skills, you teach specific knowledge, and you're hopefully getting them to apply that broadly. But man, the school library just takes it to a whole different level, I feel like. And I love it. Gotta love it. So we ended up connecting online because you had been sharing about one of the ways that you help your students sort of figure out how the library works a little bit. And I am just absolutely fascinated by this. And I'm wondering if you can give us maybe just a little bit of a background. Like, how did you end up, what was the lead in to this activity that you do with the kids?
Well, it really was kind of backwards working. Seeing a few years ago, I was working with some students and I wanted to figure out, okay, we need to get them to understand how to use digital resources because this is the world they're living in.
Uh-huh.
And we need to get them to understand the value of databases in particular. So
Yes.
now we have to teach them these tools of where the pieces of information are. Where are you finding, who made it? Where are you finding menu options? And if you kind of pull that back, okay, I can start by showing them the library catalog. And you've got menu options and you've got to look for these details to help you search and find.
Mm,
Okay, well, what's the basis for that? Let's start with a book. Let's look at the
makes
title
sense.
page. Let's look at the copyright date. Let's look at the index. Let's look at the table of contents. And if you understand these pieces and these tools for informational reading, for seeking and figuring out where those pieces are and how to get relevant information, then you
Uh-huh.
can build and you can point out and say, okay, remember the book and you have the table of contents and you have the index. These are tools to help you use it. Now we're going to go to the school catalog and use that, figure out where the menu, where your quote unquote table of contents are,
Uh-huh.
find those information. Okay, you're going to go now to a database, or you're going to go to the internet. All right, where's your author? Where's your publication date? All of those details. So, kind of coming back and then thinking, okay, we've got to get them to understand these context and understand categorical thinking. Because even if they can use these tools, I was seeing trends of students having a hard time understanding how to search.
Uh-huh.
If you have a book, the context is made for you. If you go to a database or you're on a website, a lot of that context is made for you.
Yeah.
But then how do you apply those tools, but also think of how to build a search or think in your mind
Right.
how to build a search and think of context to create that meaning that Dr. Kuhlthau talks about, for yourself.
Uh-huh.
So kind of scaffolding back and kind of thinking, all right, what do I really need them to know to start? The Dewey Decimal System.
Uh-huh.
It's a system that was created to hold that context and provide some structure. And if they understand this overarching creation,
Uh-huh.
then it can give them a way of understanding how to connect pieces for themselves.
Right. Right.
And any system will do. It's
Uh-huh.
just it's getting them to understand that there are systems.
Right. Right. And I love that you start by dealing with a book, like starting at that basic of a level. And I think there's so many awesome reasons to start there, but it's so easy to forget that students probably don't get a lot of time to focus on what are the informational elements that are contained in a book. Like, as an English teacher, I would have to, when we were talking about how to cite sources, and we'd say, okay, we're going to cite this book, and where do we find the publication date? Seventh grade, eighth grade, they don't know to look on the publication page, that the information is right there for them. Even when they're looking at it, they don't know where to look. So that you're taking it back to that real basic level, I think, is incredibly important. And I think it doesn't matter what grade level you're dealing with. I think there's absolutely a time and a place, or there should be, hopefully, a time and a place to kind of just take a book and say to the kids, like, okay, let's really look at how this is put together, because you're so right to think about, what are the structures this is all built on? Because whatever the system, like you said, there's going to be a structure. There's going to be some way that we can look at how this is put together and then maybe transfer that knowledge to, okay, we know this system. Now let's look at what's similar and different about this other system, and just building that knowledge, layering it on top of each other as you go.
Yeah, and that's that lifelong learning because no matter what you do as you
Uh-huh.
move on in your life, there's going to be systems and, groups of information that you're going to have to navigate.
Uh-huh.
And now it's been interesting seeing what's going on with AI. But even before AI, I think, and I'm sure you've seen this, there's a tendency for our kids, and I've kind of gotten deep into reading neuroscience on the side as a hobby, but our brains want that security. It wants to go directly to an answer,
Uh-huh.
and it wants that fastest path.
Uh-huh.
So students want to go directly there they don't want that open-ended exploration.
Uh-huh.
It's really hard to give them that space and bring them back. So when we have a context like the Dewey Decimal System or whatever, you can say, all right, listen, we're going to just explore. It's going to be safe, but we have some boundaries, we have some barriers, but we're going to practice that exploration and understanding how things connect because it is so easy for them these days to go directly to an answer, especially when you're fighting with like Chat GPT, who's going to spit information at them very, very quickly.
Uh-huh.
And they're going to take it because it
Uh-huh.
makes their brain feel good.
Yes. Yes. And I think there's two really important elements sort of built into that. And the one is, I believe there have been some recent studies that show that we tend to believe what's on a computer screen when it's presented to us because we tend to think of the computer as being a place where we get information. And so if it's on the computer, even though we may intellectually somewhere in our brain know just because it's on the internet doesn't make it true, it still kind of adds that almost veneer of reliability just because we're getting it from this device. So I think we're fighting that in a way. And I love that you start with books because I think that opens up the opportunity to have the conversation about, well, why do we think of books as being a more reliable source of information? Like what goes into making a book? Why would publishers spend that extra time making sure the information they're publishing into the world is reliable, is something that you can trust? And how does that compare to the internet? So there's so many layers of conversation you can have with the kids about this.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the one thing to hone in on, and I kind of bring this back, is okay, where's the money coming from?
Mm.
You take that book, and you and I'm not going to presume because you look eternally young. You and I are probably of an age where you go to the library, you didn't have to think. You knew that there were professionals,
Uh-huh.
information professionals, who had been vetting these resources and spending money. So there was value placed in them, and you didn't have to think whether or not it was good.
Uh-huh.
You just knew this is here for a reason. And now, technology happened, it changed so quickly, the internet, now social media, now AI, that understanding, okay, and this is the DIY factor, you do it yourself, you're going to get what you get.
Uh-huh.
Professional isn't doing it for you, then you have to do it yourself. So
Yeah.
talking about books and starting at that base level, even at middle school, they may or may not. You don't know the students coming to you where they've been before. If they have, an understanding of the Dewey Decimal System, doesn't matter. Understand there's a system, there are books here, and there are digital resources. Ebooks, audiobooks are also in the Dewey.
Uh-huh.
Understand the context and understand the school or me, we've selected these based upon professional understanding. We're
Uh-huh.
providing you with the author, the publication, the date of publication, the publisher, all of that. But these are the pieces of information you need. And then when you graduate to using databases and the internet and you're kind of loosening the reins of guidance and saying, now you're on your own, but you still need to find the author, the publisher, the date of
Uh-huh.
publication. Is it free? Why is it free? Who's
Uh-huh.
paying for it? Ads or the school or whoever? And get them to just think about those things and put those pieces together.
Man, having this conversation right now has got me realizing how important it is and what a great advocacy element this could be for school librarianship to point out, like, yes, the district pays me to be here, not just because they want me to check books out to you, but because I am an information professional and I am curating resources for you to save you from having to think about, is this reliable information or not? Like, what a great hook for the students. And what a great way to sort of present it to your teachers, your supervisors, your administrators to say, it's not just me sitting in a library with some materials. There's so much more going on here. And that's really what you're paying for. I kind of part of my brain knew that, but I don't think I've ever heard it put that way. So I really appreciate you pointing that out. Like, yes, that is a huge, that is the reason that we want to go to libraries.
Yeah, and that's something that I've been doing for a while. I spent some time working in the local county college because I had moved with my family for a little bit and I was in between schools and I was doing some work there. And I was talking with, working with higher ed, you're working with kids who've graduated high school.
Uh-huh.
And it really was clear to me. I need to tell them explicitly that, money, where's the money? Why should you use this database? And this is before social media was really like rampant and disinformation were problems, and understanding that I need to explicitly say it and help them connect the dots, but say it. Very clear about these things because the kids need it, but man, adults need it too.
Yes, very much.
So so yeah.
It's funny to me, and I've been having this conversation, it feels like a lot recently, but there's so many things I think we take for granted that, especially in the information environment, I think as school librarians and as educators, I think we take a lot of things for granted that these are things everybody knows, and our students don't always know that. And when we ask them, well, why didn't you do this? And they don't have an answer, it's because they didn't know. Like, they didn't know they should be looking for, where did this come from? They didn't know they should be following the money to figure out how this came into the world in the first place. And we just assume, well, of course you're thinking about that when you take in information, but A, our students don't necessarily know that. And B, like you point out, humans like that direct answer. So whether they're kids or adults, when it's presented to them, they are more likely to just soak that in and not necessarily do that sort of mental due diligence that should be done. And I hadn't made that connection before about how, like, when we were in our youths going to the public library, you just knew, like, you didn't have to think about that. And it's been, I mean, you've really got me think, like, my wheels are spinning now about how, boy, I know where to look for reliable information, and I've never really in my life had to worry about where do I look for reliable information. But now that landscape is completely different.
No rules. There's no guardrails. And
Yeah.
good information. So good information, I feel like Ratatouille, it can come from anywhere. Anybody can produce good information. So, and that's tricky because it isn't clear. I mean, you can get good information from YouTube.
Absolutely.
And early on, I want to say when I first started, back in like 2000, I want to say like 2007, I was in a high school, and I remembered like teachers would be like, no Wikipedia. I'm like, no. Let them evaluate Wikipedia. There's ways to use it wisely. Why are we saying don't use this and don't do that? Because you're cutting off independent critical thinking.
Yeah.
And especially working with teens, especially middle schoolers, I love them. They're so funky and weird, and I love it. I don't know why. But telling them, say, guys, look, you can listen to me or not, but these are the pieces of information you need to know. And if you can understand this, then guess what? You can decide for yourself. You don't have to rely on me to tell you. It's up to you. I know how to do this stuff. But if you want to make choices for yourself, because they don't like people telling them what to do, right? If they want to make choices for themselves, say, this is on you. Here, this is what you need to look for. And so kind of getting back to the lesson that I did,
sorry, I have dragged us so far afield, but
that we're geeking out and I love it. So getting back to it, full disclosure, I've already decided how I'm going to revamp it and do it differently. Because
that's okay. Reflection, incredibly important.
Exactly. And I'm great at experimenting. I love just throwing stuff, and I'm in a great space where I can do that. So I've got a teacher, especially I'm working with right now. She's like, let's just do it and we'll figure it out. And then we kind of figure out what to do next time. So kind of getting back to the presentation I had developed, talking about the first image, and I had used this years ago, is the fire hydrant. And it's, going on the internet is like trying to drink water from a fire hydrant. But, it's not like that anymore because everybody's just going directly to the answers, or you have, whatever AI automated that's spitting answers back at you. You're not even touching like the tip of the internet. It's more like you've got AI and algorithms spoon feeding you. So I tell my students, do you want to be spoon fed? It's up to you. If you want to just take whatever it's giving you, whatever these algorithms are giving you, fine. But if you don't, you need context, you need direction, you need containment. And here are some examples. So by going through, I give them examples of information systems, and then we go into Dewey. And again, this can work with any information system. I know some people don't like Dewey, or they might have different ways of organizing their libraries. Totally fine. But then I walk them through and I just give them an overview. And it seems like a lot. I have a lot of slides, but it goes quickly. And you can even engage with the students. We were finding that as we were going through some of the categories of Dewey and giving them like the subcategories, we could say like, okay, well, what type of category do you think is my favorite? Here's fairy tales and folk tales. What do you think I like better? Or kind of engaging them that way and getting them to read the slides.
Mm-hmm.
And then understanding, because this is also gets to the point of kids want to go to that 0 point. They want to center in and get that tidbit and leave. So they don't know. And it's really hard to expand a topic. It's easy to narrow in, but it's hard to expand.
Yeah.
So by using the different levels of Dewey and giving them some examples, I can show them how they can take an idea and they can expand it or contract it and explore. And we're starting to get into that with some of the classes now. But if you get the idea of how things kind of connect in categories, you've got big topics, subtopics, and then smaller details. And within Dewey, you can give them concrete examples. So trying to get them to understand how to do that. And so then I show them and I give them an example, and then they go into the stacks and they get a book and they have to show how that single book, where it belongs in the big context. And it was just sort of a fun, interactive thing for them to do. And there were some things I would change, but overall, getting them to think beyond just that 0 point information and leave. Giving them some boundaries, some safety, and say, like, just explore. That's really hard for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love, the fire hose. I've got a video clip from the Weird Al movie UHF where a kid drinks out of a fire hose and gets blasted across the room. That's in every one of my presentations. I love it. But you're absolutely right. It's not that anymore. And I just hadn't, again, I need to get my own thinking caught up with what's actually going on, because my thoughts and my assumptions are not necessarily what the students are experiencing. Like, they're coming up in a different world. And I think about that in terms of like the fiction reading that they do, that they've got a much better selection of stuff. And I'm trying to keep my eyes open and find them stuff there. But the information landscape is so incredibly different. And like, part of me intellectually knows that, but to actually talk it through with you right now really is making me question some of my deeply held assumptions about what they're seeing and how they're interacting. So I really appreciate that you are sharing this, because it's an important conversation. And I think I am going to guess I'm probably not the only one out there who's kind of stuck in this mindset of, yes, it's a fire hose that they're getting blasted in the head with. And that's not where we are anymore.
They're not. And it's even working with the teachers, because I've been in this for a while, but even when I first started, I was reading a lot of academic papers and studies, and I was realizing that working with my teachers was going to help the students, because they're going to go to their teachers first. Some of them might be intimidated by the librarian and, oh my gosh, my book is going to be late, or, I damaged a book, she's going to hate me.
Right.
And so their first point of contact is a teacher. So while I'm trying to work with students and build a rapport and have books and bringing, programming and have helpers coming in, I really want to talk and work with the teachers, because if I can get them to understand that I can help, I can support their instruction, I'm going to make their lives better. I'm not going to be some added thing that's going to give them more of a headache. But if I can get the teachers to buy into what I'm trying to lay down, these skills that I'm trying to give the students to build and carry across their subjects, then it's like a 1-2 punch. It's a direct and an indirect. And so that's especially key for me, that I keep going back to too. I hone in on the teachers. I'm trying. It takes time, takes trust.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But
when you can convince them. Yeah. When you're able to convince them that you're going to take stuff off of their plate, you're not making more work for them, because they've already got, everybody else is pushing more work on them. Like, it's coming from the top, the bottom, the sides. So when we're able to step in and say, like, look, I know you've got a ton of things. Here's something that I can do to take some stuff off of your plate. You're going to make a friend for life. So
bring them in the life. Like, listen, I've worked with math teachers. I've worked with special ed teachers. I've worked with the health teachers. I've worked with all kinds of teachers. And I feel like sometimes they still don't believe me. Like, I can make anything tie into information literacy.
Mhm.
So just give me a chance.
Yeah.
And it just drives me each and every day.
I love it. And I'm looking through your slides as we're talking, and you had said like, oh, there's so many slides, but they go fast. I honestly think that that is a mark of a good lesson rather than a bad lesson, because I think way too often I do this, and I know other people do this. I'll make a slide deck and I'll put 9,000 words on a slide, and I'll spend 10 minutes on that one slide when really it should be one word per slide, just enough to get the ideas going, pictures more than words. I love that yours is boom, 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 boom. Like we're just going to roll through these because it is like a conversation. It's like you're showing them, here's the things that we need. And you're just kind of hit the highlights as you go. And they're seeing it rather than just sitting there hearing you read them a slide off of the screen that they can already see.
Yeah, and this actually originally started, they had, I think, a free version of Powtoon. I don't know if you're familiar with Powtoon. I had used a free version of Powtoon, I guess about 4 years ago, and I made a little video of this little character. I think I had access to like a panda, and it was organizing panda. And I did these slides, like a version of these, and it was just a little video, and I could do it as like a do now to the kids or just an intro. And so this past year, I was in a different school and I wanted to bring it back. I had this teacher who was open to working with me. And I'm like, okay, I don't have the Powtoon anymore. And I don't know what happened or whatever. But I had the outline of what I was doing. And it was actually a blog from a librarian that the description of the Dewey and the way that she spoke about what the categories were, that kind of was beautiful. And so I adopted that. So I made it into these slides. Instead of doing a video that's just a standalone for like 2.5 minutes, I incorporated it into a bigger presentation that can be shown on its own, although I do have a lot of images and not as much text. Like I do have to talk along with some of them. But some of it can also be taken out and just made into a little video. So then what I can do and what I'd like to do is take these presentations and make a little library of resources that students and teachers can refer to on demand through the library website. And so doing these kinds of things. I mean, I'm doing it with Canva now. And I love Canva. It's so much fun. I'm having a ton of fun with it. But I want to build this repository of resources. And I feel like every time I've been in a different school or a different place, I just build new. It's constantly building new. I haven't really had a lot of time to, have anything stay for very long, but that's okay. I want to stay fresh. I want to understand what's going on in the information world. I say information environment, but I heard it referred to as the infosphere, like instead of atmosphere. I don't know if you've heard that. But I want to stay abreast of what's coming up in the infosphere
Yeah.
and be relevant. So, really just this set of slides, however I take it and evolve it, however anybody wants to take ideas and evolve it, I think that's part of what is also interesting as being a librarian. I'm never bored.
Yes. Oh, yeah. No, there's always something new. There's always something to do.
Yeah.
I love this idea of infosphere too, as related to atmosphere, because we are just breathing in and completely surrounded by and permeated by all the information that's just everywhere these days.
It's exhausting, isn't it?
It can be.
Yeah.
It really
And
can be.
these kids are. And it's really funny. All the technology we have and these kids are tuned into TikTok and all this stuff. I have fantastic ebooks. I have a whole thing of graphic novel, like tons and tons of ebooks. These kids do not care about them whatsoever. They don't want to touch them. They don't want to read another darn thing on a screen. They love having that book. I mean, I have like the newest One Piece, 3-in-1 volume, and they get to take that book and they get to hold it and they get to pull it out of their backpack. These kids, I think all of us, we don't want more digital. We want tangible. We want that in-person experience. And I think that's so, so vital, especially these days. We need to make sure we provide those spaces for them.
Absolutely. And I agree. Like I've been spending a chunk of my budget for the past couple of years on a couple of digital resources that like Comics Plus, blows my mind with how much stuff is available to the
So
kids.
fun. It's great.
It's so awesome. And yet at the same time, I feel reluctant to suggest it to my students because I know they're on screens all the time. And it's like, ugh.
But, one thing I do like about it is that, all right, we do have expanded tools. Students that maybe have visual needs or auditory needs or language
Absolutely.
learners, there are some ways that I want to work strategically to direct funds for the materials for a specific purpose. And I think there are a lot of good options out there now these days that weren't available even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So, whereas we don't want to go all digital, we don't want to be only print. We want to have those expanded resources for kids who maybe they already have two books out and, maybe they damaged a book and you're like, okay, listen, but we've got to think about our responsibilities.
Yeah.
You have access to all of these other books online that you can read as much as you want. It's not going to get damaged. You're not going to lose it. The library's not going to lose funds.
That's another great point that, gee, you are like my mind is going to be, I'm not going to be able to put hats on anymore because my mind is expanding so much in this conversation because I have not thought about the fact that the kids who are damaging all my physical stuff, why don't I just point them at the digital stuff?
I did see a post that you made this week about the book coming up.
God, they're killing me, losing my mind. But that's a conversation for another day. So organizationally, you are helping these kids really think about where they're going, what they're doing, and why. I think the why is so important. And I really appreciate that.
Why is the most important question that we can ask?
Mm-hmm.
And what I prompt with the kids, because I really believe in getting them to ask questions and understand the value of questions. And so it's always going back to what do we do? What does Q stand for? Why, the who, the what, the where, the when, the how. And sometimes kids will jump to why, because I ask them what are the question words. I said, no. We can't understand the why unless we answer those other ones first. You
Mm-hmm.
don't know why you should use a resource or not until you know, well, who made it? How are you accessing it? How are they getting it to you? Where is it coming from? When was it made? You have to answer those questions first, and then you can understand the why. And the why is the most important one.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get there directly. You have to go indirectly. You have to build that understanding.
Yes. Wow. Love it. Boy, there's so much good stuff here. I really, really love this.
Don't need to overwhelm.
No, it's great. It's absolutely great. I am curious with this lesson that you've been doing. As I look through it, I wonder like how maybe adjustable is it, or like how do you differentiate this for students that are either coming in with, like you were saying, limited English proficiency, or maybe just our students who are not as academically strong? Like, are there any particular ways that you have differentiated in the past or that you imagine differentiating this?
So this was my first time doing this specific one.
Okay.
I did it, before, again, I just had it as a video, like a little, 3-minute clip. And that was just a little intro. So this was my first time doing it like this in a full form. And, I will say that I think there are ways to simplify it or streamline it just a little bit for students who might need that. I don't think you need to do much to make it more full for high school students. I really don't. I think there's a lot that the high school students need at this level too. They need reminders,
Absolutely.
they need refreshers, maybe just go a little bit faster through things and, not spend as much time on trying to get them to understand how information is connected or how topics expand or contract. And what I'd really like to do is next time, so evolve this lesson because I already wouldn't do it this way. Crazy. Things change so fast. I'm already like, no, this isn't good enough because it's really not. Now I look at it and I'm like, ugh, terrible. But I really want to spend more time on having the students practice topic expansion and contraction because that's really what the point of it is. We want them to understand how to think in their minds and explore because we want to get them away from that, direct answer, easy thing, walk away, sense of mental safety, get them to feel comfortable with exploration and
Yes.
open-endedness. That's the struggle I think that we face, even just as a society, with AI and
Mhm.
computers and the social media, everything. We don't explore. We don't question ourselves enough. We don't give space to just sit with uncertainty. And that kind of gets me back to Dr. Carol Guthow and her information search process, where she integrated the psychology of what's happening in the process. People, and I wrote, I just started writing some Substack, and I wrote one about, I called it information grit, feeling uncertain about
Mhm.
not knowing something. You've got to push through that and have some grit
Yes.
to get through to the other end, to finish the whole search process, the whole research process, to get to the point where you actually learn something.
Mhm.
And if you're stunting that. So if you're
Absolutely.
not giving space to kids, but also supporting them in feeling uncertain, then you're not giving them the space to really push through and learn.
Yeah.
So that's what I really want to try and bring into the lesson more, is give them that chance to sit with uncertainty.
Mhm.
When you're teaching and you have very limited time and you're just grateful to have a teacher who's like, I'll bring them in and you have 40 minutes for a lesson. You're like, oh my God, I have so much to say. How do I say it all? Yeah. So I really am very much looking forward to trying this lesson again, revamping it, and focusing in on giving them a little more space
Mhm.
just for that quietness and that uncertainty. Let them sit with it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you're saying that because last week I was doing a lesson on research with one of the history teachers who was doing this big project. And she and I were kind of collaborating back and forth. And when they came in to talk about what are the sources that you guys might use, and I, put some stuff together for them, I was partway into it. And I always sort of have in the back of my mind Dr. Kolthau's process of research and how
Mhm.
frustration is part of that.
Yeah.
And so I expressed that to the students. I was like, gang, you're going to at some point feel frustrated. You're not going to have the answer, and that's okay. That's part of the process.
Yes.
And
Give
like,
them permission
really,
to feel. Give them
yes,
permission. Yes.
yes, absolutely. And so my analogy that I kind of came up with on the fly that I want to try and expand for next time around is it's like playing a video game. Because when you sit down and play a video game for the first time, you don't know how to play it. You don't know what the rules are. You got to figure it out as you go. You don't expect to sit down and beat the big boss on the first go round. Like it's going to take you multiple times. That's what research is. Like you're going to go in, you're going to try multiple things and they're not going to work and you're going to have to come back at it. And that's okay. That's part of the process.
I love that. I love that. So I'm always trying to find ways to make things relevant to them, right? Connect to what they're doing today, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that analogy of like, you're playing a video game. You're already using these skills,
Mm-hmm.
right? You got to show the kids, you got to show people. You're already applying it in your life. You just don't know you are.
Yeah.
Now you're going to take it and apply it here. And I had
Mm-hmm.
done something similar a few years ago where I did like, oh God, I'm blanking. The like TTYL, what is that?
Yeah. The like text messaging of
Text
the
messaging beforehand. Oh my God, I'm so
T9. That's what it was. T9 language.
right, right. So I told them, I put a bunch of up on the screen. I said, you guys can read these, right? What do they say? And the kids knew. I'm like, okay. So when you're looking at an article online, you're not reading every single word. You're pinpointing the pieces of information that you need to understand. You don't
Mm,
have to sit there and read. And now, I mean, students who need more instruction on literacy and reading skills, you don't do
hmm
this. You've got to
Right.
do it with kids who already have strong literacy skills. But when you're talking about informational reading, because hey guys, you already know some of the shorthand. You already do this. So now let's apply it here and understand that you don't have to sit and read an entire article in full. You don't have to take a book and read every single book. You're going to look at the index. You're going to look at the table of contents. You're going to find the information you need within. Look at the headings. Figure out what's bold. Pinpoint the things. You can do it. Your brain can
hmm
do it because you do it.
Right.
Apply it here.
And what a great opportunity that would be to expand into history classes, into science classes, and say, when you're reading your textbooks, like science teachers, let me take them for a minute and talk to them about this information and how they're taking it in. Because again, it's there are skills that they're transferring, and they probably don't even recognize that they are skills in the first place and that they're transferring them.
And that's another reason why I love being a librarian, because we have an opportunity. We are one of those unique roles in a school where we can conceivably see every student from all different classes. And so we can say, remember when I did this with your teacher here?
Mm-hmm.
All right, now you're back here. We're going to apply it over here.
Yeah.
And you do make those cross-curricular connections. And that's how you build that lifelong understanding and the skills, you know?
Love
I
it.
love it. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you've already said that you're thinking about doing some revamping. Are there any particular things that you're sort of leaning toward?
So I was trying to figure out how I could make it less scripted with me talking and
Mm,
more get the kids asking questions, more
gotcha.
prompts, more involving, because
Mm-hmm.
it really does start with a lot of me saying things, but
Mm-hmm.
I need to bring myself to a point where I'm not trying to shove information at them because I'm so desperate to tell
Uh-huh.
them what I think they need to know.
Uh-huh.
I want to make sure that I'm giving space for them to do a little more wondering and make some of the connections themselves. So I need to figure out ways to make it more of a guidance and get them to fill in some of the blanks.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I really want to focus on for next time. You know,
Gotcha.
and it's crazy because I have been in so many different libraries and different positions over the years. I love where I am right now, and I really hope I get to stay for a while and really build on some of these things. So there's kind of a fun aspect of having to reinvent and recreate for the audience and for the building and for their unique needs,
Mm-hmm.
but I haven't really had as much time lately to take a lesson and evolve it. A lot of it's been on the fly or trying to figure out. So I am looking forward to really taking that time and evolving it. And I don't know, do you have any suggestions for me? I would love if you have any suggestions for me.
I I am still just trying to process there's so many great things here. So I will have to get back to you on that. But I mean, I am absolutely loving this.
No, so I love podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I think they're fun. And I don't know if you know who Mike Birbiglia is.
Yes.
Yeah, so he has a podcast called Working It Out, and he has guests on and they talk about jokes and they workshop them. I'm like, that's what I need. I don't need to talk about my lesson as much as I need help how to make it better.
That's one of the things I love about getting to do this is I get to hear all these great ideas, and like as we're talking I get to throw out like, well, oh yeah, that makes me think of this and that and the other thing, and like just that conversation sometimes, because I mean, as school librarians we're already in our own separate silos, and we don't have that professional
A team.
conversation in the hallway. Yeah.
Yeah. We don't
Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right. It would be so valuable for us to have that time to just sit and talk to each other about specific lessons that we have done, to do that feedback and to do that sort of group reflection. And oh, what about this? How about that? Even just seeing from a different perspective, sometimes you get this whole different way of thinking about it.
Yeah, yeah. I would love more of that
Yeah.
all the time
Now,
in the world.
yeah, well, yeah. So I'm kind of curious. You said this is the first year that you've done this way, and you work with 5 through 8, right?
I do, although next year it's transitioning. It'll just be 6, 7, 8.
Okay. So what grade level was this where you're mostly working with this? Was it all of them, or was it sort of
No, no.
targeted?
So it was concentrated on 7th and 8th graders. So we have a certain subsect where the teacher has 7th and 8th grade in different classes, but they have
Uh-huh.
like two 7th grade, two 8th grade. So I've
Uh-huh.
gotten to do it with the 7th and 8th graders. And it was really interesting. I think what I'd really like to do is kind of build a curriculum for the library where 6th grade focuses on um, kind of the understanding the tools of informational reading and bring it back to that book and remind them of, okay, publisher, author, all of that kind of stuff, and build an understanding of the systems and how we use them. But then 7th grade really start bringing it into the research process. And I've actually been working on a model myself. And I don't want to get into it because it's a lot. That's a whole nother deal. But I get them to really understand the research as a process. And then 8th grade kind of solidify those skills and reinforce. So I think this particular one, organizing information, would be great at 7th grade, that middle spot, give them that foundation. And that way, when they're in 8th grade and I'm working with them, we're really focusing on the mental acuity of expanding, contracting, making connections, thinking about context and all of that. So that's my ideal world. We'll see what
Sure. Yeah, I mean, like you said, you need the time and the space to kind of develop and see how it goes. So, having done this with the students, and I know this is the first time, and I don't know when in the year you were playing with this, but have you gotten any feedback from either the students or the teachers about how they've been able to use some of these skills, or whether they've seen these skills, whether the teachers have sort of seen this in effect in their rooms?
So I really just this past week got to see this set of students again, and it was wonderful because I was connecting with them and saying, okay, remember we talked about, and reinforcing the questions of who, what, where, when. And I was getting them to now think about searching for topics in a single database. We just said one database, and they were finding information for Women's History Month. They have to do some slides. So I was getting to that point now. Okay, we've had a few lessons. I've talked about a few different things. So now this is expanding on it and saying, okay, let's think about topic. And a lot of them did struggle because we said, okay, you have to find any person, any woman that you want to do in this database. And there were students who were like, well, who should I do? Well, look, here are some topics to explore. Use this, function of the database. What do you like? I don't know. I don't like to read. Well, no, I'm asking you what you like to read. What are you interested in? You like sports? No. You like fashion? Yeah. Type in fashion. Type women in fashion and see what comes up. And you have students reading about Coco Chanel, or we're finding like a Ghanaian queen from 19, hundreds British colonialism, giving them the space, giving them that opportunity to be uncertain and saying, no, I'm not going to give you an answer. Take this time. You have 15 minutes now. Explore. You like sports? Yes, I like sports. Okay. Type in sports, and it was really wonderful. I loved it. And I loved when I
Yeah.
got to tell them, like, relax, you're okay. It was really refreshing. It was great.
Yeah. Oh man, that's always such a wonderful moment when you get to see the fruit being, blossoming on the vine, as it were.
Yeah,
Man, so
it was starting to take off. I was really happy to see those connections. It was fun.
yeah, oh, that's great stuff. So, are there any particular things, if somebody wants to kind of take this and run with it, anything in particular they should sort of have in mind for the first time they're heading into this activity?
Yeah, I mean, I think it might depend on the age of students that you're working with, like how much you really want to go into. So I really went and I explained every single category, and I gave examples of each category, and I have this framework of describing the Dewey categories. You don't necessarily have to go into all of that. You can give kids a taste of one, and maybe you want to just break it down to one and focus and make it a little bit more simple and say, all these categories are here. Let's just use this one as an example, and so that might be a way that might be more digestible for some. And maybe I'll even do that in the future. I don't know. So that's something that I would probably think about changing or doing differently depending on, group size, where their skills are, and all of that.
That's one of the things I love about this lesson is I think there's a lot of ways for it to be sort of tweaked and to meet the needs of whatever group of students you happen to be working with at the time. Like you can really hone it in and really focus on the skills they need and that are going to, if they're that are going to meet their level, I guess, wherever they happen to be at. So yeah, oh, I really love this. I'm really glad that you shared this with us because there's so much here. But I think we are at the point where we're going to take our 90-degree turn and go into our book break.
Book break. Swiggity.
Oh, for the book break, you get to share anything you want to share. It can be personal, professional. It can be just something you're reading on the beach this summer. Whatever you want to share. What do you think people might want to have on their reading radar?
Yeah, this one is tough for me. Whenever I was doing interviews or if somebody asked me what my favorite book is, I get really nervous because all of a sudden I go blank. So I have put a lot of thought into this because I've had some time, and I really struggled with what do I want to pinpoint because I can't talk about all the things I read. But I decided I wanted to mention Dr. Iain McGilchrist. He is a psychiatrist, among many other things, and he wrote The Master and His Emissary. I have not read The Master and His Emissary because I have about 10 books and like 30 articles that I want to read, and they keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger piles. But
yeah.
I read his primer on it called Ways of Attending, and that was a nice, short, sweet read. Really, that's what got me thinking about neuroscience and the way our brains function, and that there's an actual mechanism. There's a reason why we hone in on and we want that certainty. Carol Kuthow had talked about that feeling of uncertainty, and the ways that we process psychologically the research process and information seeking. But hearing him in his podcast where I first heard him, and then looking at the book and understanding the ways our brains focus on things, there are reasons for it. And so understanding that human information behavior, why my students are acting this way, how can I work to help them through it so that they are learning good information literacy skills. So that was something it's short, Ways of Attending. It's not that long. You get a taste of, this kind of perspective. And he's a bit controversial, so some people may agree, some may not. But I found it very, very enlightening.
I love that. I love that there are so many different areas that I think school librarians in particular tend to dip into. And I love that you're bringing us into this, the neuroscience field, to think about a very important element of what we're doing with our students. So thank you. I appreciate that. So I think we're getting pretty close to our wrap up point, but people definitely are going to want to hear more from you. So where should people go looking for you when they want to track you down?
So I am on Bluesky, and I for years struggled with how do I want to be known. So I'm not even sure my actual handle is the right one, but if you find TheMeriLibrarian, MERI Librarian. And so that's me. That's me. My name is Meredith, but all throughout my childhood growing up, everyone called me Mary. And so TheMeriLibrarian, I want to be happy. I want to find joy in being a librarian. I love being a librarian. If I want to feel fancy, I'm an information scientist. But so they can find me on there. And then, I started doing some Substack. I've tried different things over the years, Medium, and even writing my own blog. But so right now, my newest thing is Substack, and I'm on TheMeriLibrarian on there as well. So that's
awesome.
That's where they can find it.
Cool. Well, I know people are going to want to, because again, just this conversation we have had has just already, my brain is spilling over, and I love it. It's so wonderful. So thank you so much for sharing.
No, thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity. I've followed you a little bit, online, and I'm really excited that I got to do this today. And I want to continue learning from you as well. So thank you.
Thanks for checking out this episode of the SLLN podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes, which include not only a link to the lesson, but also links to the SLLN website, home to a curated list of free upcoming virtual events and resources for school librarians. It's easy to become a member of the network. Just visit the site and use what you like. If you have an idea, a question, or a lesson you want to share, you can email schoolliblearning@gmail.com. That's school, L-I-B, learning@gmail.com. Know someone with a great school library lesson? Let us know. Until next time, be safe, be good, and be well.